Alright, welcome to Preliminary Nursing School. I'm still Nurse Ofochimwendo Victoria. Remember that here on Preliminary Nursing School, we're bringing you back-to-back anatomy lectures like I promised. So the previous video, we were able to look at introduction to anatomy where we saw, the definitions of anatomy and physiology. We looked at the divisions of anatomy, and then we looked at the approaches to the study of anatomy where we saw regional anatomy and systemic anatomy. So if you've not watched that video, do well to go back, watch that video so that you can catch up with what we are discussing today, which is levels of complexities within the human body. So levels of complexities within the human body is another topic in anatomy where we're trying to look at what point did the human body begin? Where did we begin from? So I can look at my body now. I can see my body with my hands and my face and my everything, my legs, everything. Now the question is, where did we all begin from? Scientists tell us we began as a single cell called a zygote. So that means life began from cells. So do stick to the end of this video. Do remember to like this video and subscribe so that you'll be notified when other videos come out. Today we'll be looking at levels of complexities within the human body, as you can see on the board. So what we are saying here is that we want to talk about how the whole human body came about, because we're talking about anatomy is the study of the structure and parts of the human body. So today's lecture is talking about how did we all start? Where did we all start from? At what level did we all start from? You understand? Because look at your body now, how the level of growth in your body right now. So the question is, where did we start from? And they said, not that they said, science tells us that we all started as cells, okay? That the human being started as a single cell called a zygote. And that this zygote is formed during fertilization. When the sperm and the egg come together, they form a zygote. And inside of the uterus, inside of the womb of a woman, this cell begins to multiply several times, multiply again and again and again until a human being is formed at the end of 9 months and delivered off. Now the little baby begins to grow and grow and grow and grow to the adult human body. So that's what we know. Then if you look at the board, you see that the human body is highly sophisticated and consists of cells, tissues, organs, and systems that work together to perform all the functions necessary to sustain life. So it's actually a sophisticated combination. The human body is actually a sophisticated combination of cells, of tissues, of organs, and systems that work together to perform all the functions necessary to sustain life. And what are these functions that sustains life? Every life has got to move. That's movement, respiration. Every life has got to respire. Then we have nutrition and elimination and all that. So it's a sophisticated combination or amazing combination of cells and tissues that work together to perform all these functions that are necessary to sustain life. But it all began from somewhere. Like I just explained, it all began from one single cell. Every life began as a single cell that began to multiply to form tissue, that began to, multiply and evolve and all that. But then we won't talk about levels of complexities, and that's still what we're looking at. That's still what we're saying. So the very first place it began is at cells. So we began at number one, at cells. But then the question is, where did cells come from? Before we begin to look at tissues and organs and systems and organisms and biosphere, we were saying that life began at this point, at cells, right? The human body began as a single cell. But then where did cells come from? You say, okay, the cell came from the cell of the mother and the father. Where did the cell of the mother and the father come from? Okay. So via science, we know that cells consist of atoms and molecules. Cells consist of atoms and molecules. So the very first place it began is A, B, and C. It began from subatomic particles. So subatomic particles are substances like proton, neutron, and electron. Particles like proton, neutron, and electron that make up atoms. So atoms are the smallest indivisible, they are the smallest particles, okay, consisting of proton, neutron, and electron. So atoms are like the smallest particle of any substance. The smallest particle of any substance are atoms, and they consist of proton, neutron, and electrons. Now, a combination of two or more atoms gives us molecules, such like sugar molecules, that's glucose molecules, protein molecules. All these things we find within a cell, they are mostly under molecules. So atoms, two or more atoms come together to form molecules, and atoms and molecules make up a human cell. Now you can see that these 1, 2, 3 are labeled as A, B, C. Now the other ones are labeled 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6. That is because this number 1, there's the cells. This is where life begins. All these places, okay, remember again that we're talking about levels of. So again, we are looking at levels of complexities within the human body. We are looking at levels of complexities within the human body. That's the step-by-step process, or the step-by-step pattern by which we arrive at a whole human being. And we said it all began at 1, 2, 3. It all began at this, and this. You can clearly see that A is subatomic particles, B is atoms, and C is molecules. I've already explained that subatomic particles are particles or substances we find that make up an atom. And I talked about atom is the smallest particle of any substance, the smallest unit of any substance. Then atoms, then we have molecules, which is a combination of two or more atoms. Alright, so that is from where we get to cells. So a cell is the smallest unit of life, is where life begins. That's why I labeled these ones as A, B, C, and began with 1, 2, 3 here, because this is where life begins. So a cell is defined as the smallest or the basic structural and fundamental unit of life. The cell is the basic structural and fundamental unit of life. Simply put it, or what it's saying is that the cell is the smallest life. This is where life begins. This is where life begins. If you move anywhere lower than cells, what you find is non-living things. What you find lower than cell is non-living things. Because subatomic particles, atoms, and molecules are non-living things. They cannot sustain life. They are non-living things. So cell is the very first stage where life begins. Life begins at the stage of the cell. Life begins at this point. And the cell is defined as the basic, smallest, fundamental, unit of life. This is where life begins. Anywhere lower than cell, you find non-living particles, non-living things. So the life begins here, and from cells it evolves into tissues. So tissue is the number 2 stage of the level of complexity of the human body. So what are tissues? Tissues are a collection of cells in the same location performing similar function. So that is tissue. Tissue are just a combination of cells form tissues. Now, a combination of tissues form organs. So organs are a collection of tissues that are specialized to carry out a particular function. So that is organs. So from organs, we evolved to get systems. So we know that there are about 11 systems in the body. We're talking about the cardiovascular system, the endocrine system, the gastrointestinal system, that is the digestive system, the urinary system, and whatnot. So the system is the number 4. So from systems, and systems are a collection of organs that come together to form system. Then from system we have organism. The organism is the whole human body, which is a combination of systems that work together to carry out all the functions of life. Then from the organism we move to the last stage of the complexity, which is the biosphere. So the biosphere is the area where living organisms, area of the earth where living organisms dwell, where living organisms live, where living organisms live. So we're looking at, from cells we get tissues, from tissues we get organs, and then from organs we get systems. This should be systems, and from systems we get the whole organism, and from the organism we get the biosphere. So the summary of what we are saying is that the human body as we know it is sophisticated. It consists of numerous cells and tissues and organs that come together to help sustain life. You know, that we can move, that we can eat, that we can do all the things that we do as human beings, is because there's this harmony, there's this collaboration between the cells, the tissue, the organs and systems in our body that help us to carry out all the activities of life that are necessary for us to continue to live on. Now, we are saying that this human body as we have it, my body as I have it right now at this stage, where did I begin from? Where did it all begin from? And scientists tell us that we all began as cells. We all began as cells, right? So we all began as a single cell that began to multiply and multiply, so that we have tissues, and then we have organs, and then we have systems, and then we have the whole organism, and then we have the biosphere. But then, before we get the cells, we had these three things. We had the subatomic particles, the atoms and the molecules that work together to form cells, Now you can already see that subatomic particles, atoms and molecules are non-living things, right? So that is also where we bring in the concept of God, right? The maker of the world, because these are non-living things. How did they transform to form a living organism, which is a cell? So we believe that at this point, a supernatural force brought in the breath of life, right? That helps these cells to become alive. Because remember I said that this is the smallest unit of life. This is where life begins. Because lower than this, you find non-living particles that are not alive. So it means from subatomic particles we have atoms and molecules. But then something happened at this stage that helps this cell to become a living thing, to become a living organism, to become a living, a living thing. So that lower than cells, you find non-living subatomic particles, atoms, and molecules. So, but then from where life begins, that is from cells, we have tissues and organs, systems, organisms, and the entire biosphere. So that is it for levels of complexities. We'll see you again. Meanwhile, still on the issue of cells, we still be able to look at in the coming videos. We'll still be able to look at cells in detail, because when we're talking about cells, we're looking at the constituents or the contents of cells. We'll begin to look at the nucleus, the mitochondria, the ribosomes, and all that. Then tissues is also a broad, topic on its own that we'll be looking at very soon. So do subscribe so that you are notified when that video is out. So tissues, we have 4 major tissues in the body. There are many tissues in the body, but we have 4 major. That is the epithelial tissue, the connective tissue, the muscle tissue, and the nervous tissue. We're still going to be looking at that in details. Now we have organs. So like I said, organs are a collection of tissues that perform a particular function. And there's so many organs in the body, like the liver, the lung, the heart, the brain. All these things are organs. Then we have systems. So systems are a collection of organs that do a particular function, like the digestive system, the respiratory system, and all that. We're still going to be looking at systems, system by system. Then we have organism. So that is it. Then we have the biosphere. So that is it, and I'll see you again. All right, so we've come to the end of this video. Thank you very much for sticking to this point. I know it's not easy. Thank you so much for sticking to this point. So we're able to look at the cells, the tissues, the organs, the systems of the body. Then we looked at the whole organism. Then we're able to finally look at the biosphere, which is the entire community of living things on earth. So then, before the cell began, we saw that we have the subatomic particles, then we have the atoms, and then we have the molecules. But this category, the subatomic particles, the molecules, and the atoms, these are non-living particles, these are non-living substances. So, but life then began as a cell, began from cells. Even though there's also these three levels, that's the subatomic particles, the atoms, and the molecules. Okay, but then from a combination of atoms and molecules, we get cells. So that tells us that there is an external force that added life to the atoms and molecules for them to become a living cell, right? So that means the cell is the smallest unit of life. That is where life begins. It's the smallest form of life, to put it simply. It's the smallest form of life. Anyway, thank you so much, and don't forget to drop your questions and your comments on the comment box below. In the comment box below, sorry. And then I'll see you again in the next video. Do subscribe and do like. Thank you so much.